Hey guys, you're listening to the Today's Eating Podcast, episode 35. This is where the struggles are real, the callings are heavy, the kids are sticky. We come together because it takes a village, and this is your tribe. Hey guys, welcome to episode 34. Oh wait, just kidding, it's 35. Scratch that. Welcome to episode 35. Today, I am joined by Sally from RealMomNutrition.com, and she is a dietitian and writer. She's been featured on Parents Magazine, Fitness Magazine, Family Circle, Health, All You, Parent and Child Magazine, and she's awesome. I mean, you should just check out her own website for information, but we get to the real on how to get our kids to eat healthy. And I absolutely love Sally's approach to this because she is grounded in reality that nutrition for our family is a struggle for most of us, and she doesn't gloss over the hard stuff or pretend that it's simple and fun. She is a real mom living a real life with a budget, and even though she's a dietitian, she still has a sweet tooth just like us, like she is a real person, you guys. And so I just love her approach to helping our kids eat veggies and being realistic about it at the same time, and just having that balance of, okay, we need to have a healthy family, but at the same time we don't need to go nutso about it. We don't need to stress about it. It doesn't need to become like this awful, horrible dinner experience. So for all you mamas struggling to get your kid to eat anything green, this one goes out to you. Hey, Sally, thank you so much for being on the Today's Eating Podcast with me today. I am really excited to pick your brain, really, and just talk about a ton of things related to nutrition and mom life. And so I'm really excited to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So before I, get into all the nitty gritty of everything, I want to know a little bit about, or at least share with the listeners, who you are, what life kind of looks like right now, that sort of thing.
Sure. So my name is Sally. I blog at realmomnutrition.com. I'm a registered dietitian and an author. I have two boys. They are 9 and 13. So they're both in school all day. And what life looks like for me, I work from home, and I just really am enjoying having kids who are a little bit older now. I know my readers have children of all ages, but it is really nice to be in this phase where they're more independent. Mm-hmm. You can have really great conversations with them, but they still will hug and snuggle with you. So just really enjoying this phase. There's something great about every phase, but it's nice to know that as they get older, there are still great things in every phase.
Yeah, I've heard that it's really cool when your kids start to transition more into that, I guess, like you said, to where they could sort of, at times you can see them being your friend or having real conversations with them. But yet you still have that snuggly aspect. They're still very much, relying on you. But they're more independent. So yeah, I'm excited. My kids are only 4 and 7, so I have a long way.
You're getting there, yeah.
But I'm just glad. I'm just glad we're out of diapers. So
yes, that is nice.
Yeah, once you get out of diapers, it's like you never want to go back.
Right.
So I wanted to ask you how you got into dietetics, and then also how did you start educating from the approach of, a lot of the things that you talk about on your blog or on your website or in the magazines that you've been featured in, is how it's not easy for a lot of moms to apply, nutritional meals to their, their lifestyle or for their kids and whatnot. So how did you, I feel like there's a different approach that you have, because sometimes I get these recipe books or these recipe blogs, and it's you do understand to have toddlers at my legs. I cannot do recipes with things I don't know where they came from, So yeah, I'm just curious how you started to teach with this different approach with having moms and their real lifestyles in mind.
Right. So I've been a freelance writer for a long time, and I was writing a lot for magazines about nutrition. And I loved it so much that I decided to go back to school and become a registered dietitian. So being a dietitian is my second career.
Ah.
And so I became a dietitian. I was writing a lot about nutrition, and I was writing a lot for Parents Magazine. I still do write for them, and writing a lot about kids and nutrition. And then had a child, and realized, gosh, this is so much harder than I thought it would be to feed my kids healthy foods, to feed myself in a healthy way. When I'm sleep deprived and when I'm busy, I found myself eating dry cereal out of the box for breakfast and picking food off my kids' plates and just feeling like, wow, it was so much easier
Mm-hmm.
to talk about kids nutrition before I had kids. And there is this reality to it that when I went online, I felt like I wasn't seeing. I just felt like I wasn't seeing people admit that it's hard and admit their mistakes. And so I started a blog and I called it Real Mom Nutrition because I really wanted to focus on the real aspects of life. And I often say I wanted to pull back the curtain and show people that even people who have initials after their names, like I do, and people look to as, oh, well, they have it all together. And she's had all this training and she knows what she's doing. She must be doing this perfectly. Even those people have a hard time and struggle. So on my blog, I talk a lot about successes, but also the failures, because there's always something to learn from the failures. And I think it's really helpful if you let your audience know, like, look, I don't have it all together at all. My kids go through picky phases. I make dinners that are total flops. Like I, have huge messes in the kitchen. Like things aren't perfect for me. But we can kind of learn together. And I learn a lot from my readers. We exchange ideas a lot. And I teach them strategies that I've picked up or that work for me. So it's a really nice give and take. But the bottom line is that we're all just doing the best we can, and I try to convey that in everything I do.
Yeah. What has been your like most common question about that you get about feeding their kids?
Well, picky eaters is definitely a huge struggle for a lot of people, and so I definitely get asked about that a lot. And then I think picky eaters and easy dinners, those are like the two
Yeah.
things that people struggle with the most. And it's funny because when you start, cooking for yourself or even, for you and a spouse, that's one thing. But then when you introduce kids in the mix, you really have to think about, okay, we cannot be eating at 9 o'clock in front of the TV anymore. We have to be eating at an earlier hour. We really need to be modeling good eating habits for our kids.
Yeah.
And so it really changes the game. And I think moms, still, I know that there are some men who are the cooks in the family, but I think if you look at it statistically, moms still bear that weight of doing the cooking, doing
Yeah.
most of the cooking. And so, it can sort of stretch on endlessly when you think, wow, I have to cook dinner almost every single night. And this is going to continue for,
Yeah.
years and years in the future. And I think, take that combined with kids who are not always receptive to what you cook. I think it can be really hard and demoralizing for moms. And so that's part of what I try to do is try to give those moms strategies and ideas. And, because I'm in that boat too. I don't have a toddler at my pant leg, but I remember what that was like. And, every phase has new challenges. So now I have kids who are like going off to sports practices or, a teenager who's starting, changing kind of what he likes to eat. And so every phase brings new challenges. But I think those are probably the two that I hear the most.
Yeah, I told my husband, I'm like, whenever it financially makes sense, like ever, the first thing that I want to pay for is somebody that just makes our meals. Because
Yeah.
I feel like right now I'm in the phase of once I'm done cooking one meal and then cleaning it up and, whatever, then I'm on to the next meal. And then by the time I get done cleaning that one up and we eat it in like 5 minutes after it took
Yep.
me forever to put it together, and then it's dinner time and then I'm cleaning that out and I'm just like,
Yes, yes, absolutely. It can just feel like an endless cycle of like clean up, make food, clean up, make food. It's
yeah.
yeah, it can feel like a lot.
Do you do you suggest meal prepping, or how do you suggest, how do you suggest like surviving meal times as a mom? Is it like meal prepping? Is it just planning ahead, or is it having things available? What can we do to make meal times easier?
Yeah, well, first of all, I definitely am a fan of meal prep, and I will talk about that. But first, I do want to suggest that parents of young children just cut themselves some slack
Yeah.
too and know that mealtime may not be pleasant for a while. I think that there's this idea that like
Mm.
family dinner, it's such, it's such this nice, cozy idea, and we're all going to be, sitting and sharing, things about our day. And it's going to be this great time for our family to come together. But the reality is, especially when you have young kids, babies, toddlers, even preschoolers, mealtime can be really rough. I mean, I remember tantrums at dinner
Yeah.
and kids refusing food and crying and the kids crying. Sometimes I felt like crying myself, but
Yeah.
and I think we can beat ourselves up like, why isn't this better? Why aren't we having a good family meal experience? And I even remember there were phases when I dreaded that time of the day,
Mm.
because it's not called the witching hour for nothing.
Yeah.
A lot of kids are sort of done at that
Yeah.
point. And they may not eat because they're just done, they're just ready for bed. Like, it's not the time to give them challenging foods or expect them to eat something they've never had, or expect them to behave and sit nicely when maybe they've been trying their best to hold it together in school all day or preschool or whatever it is. So first of all, cut yourself some slack and know that it will get better. Like, I've written a post about how family dinner has gotten so much better.
Mm.
And just my message for parents is just to hang on, because you will get there.
Yeah.
But yes, meal prep, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of it. I think, especially for dinner, it can be very helpful. I follow another blogger. She's actually a dietitian as well, named Lindsay from, I don't know if you've seen her site, Lean Green Bean. And I've picked up this. She's big on meal prep, and her tip, which I think is great, is to find your pain points in the week and prep those foods. So let's say dinner is your pain point, that like you get to 5 o'clock every day and you're thinking, I have no idea what we're going to have. And the
Yeah.
kids are, crying and you're stressed and tired. Then prep meals. If snacks are your issue, and you're raiding the cabinet when the kids are taking a nap and you're eating junk or whatever because that's all you can grab quickly, then prep some healthy snacks for the week. So find those pain points and do that, because you can't spend all weekend prepping every single thing for the week ahead. That's just no way to spend your weekend.
Right.
Um, so for me, it's definitely healthy snacks for me during the week because I work from home. So I try to prep something on Sunday for the week, whether it's like a homemade bar or an energy bite or something like that. And then dinner. So I'm a big fan of freezer meals. I have a post. I don't know if you have show notes, but I can send you the post that I have a roundup of freezer meals
Yeah, that'd be
that,
great.
maybe you get together with some girlfriends, or you and your spouse or partner spend a few hours making some meals to put in the freezer. Maybe once a week you double whatever you're making and you put that other half in the freezer. I'm actually in a freezer meal group where we make each other freezer meals. Everybody makes two recipes, and then you come together and share them. And so everybody goes home with like 6 to 8 meals. And so just knowing, gosh, twice a week, I can just pull something out of the freezer and I don't have to think about it. Maybe I make a simple salad or a side or something,
Yeah.
is just huge. And then, maybe designating one night as a crock pot night and one night as leftovers or scrounge for the refrigerator.
Yeah.
Just whatever's in the fridge, pull it out and everybody kind of build their own. And then, let yourself have one night for takeout or eating out. And so when it comes down to it, when you have all those, it's really only cooking a few nights a week. And if you have those freezer meals in there, it's even less. So, but I there is no shame in sandwich night. I'm huge on sandwich night. We have a panini press, and I get like good bread and some, deli meat, and we have paninis. And so you can have sandwiches, you can have breakfast for dinner. Those are both pretty easy, make some pancakes and fruit salad and something like that. It doesn't have to be fancy. PBJs, no shame in PBJs for dinner. Sit down all together and have that. So, everybody kind of knows their limits, and Some moms are like, yes, I want to cook a few nights a week. Some moms are like, I can't even cook one night a week. And so you just have to do your best and get through whatever season of life and phase that you're in, knowing that things will change. I mean, as well as I do that, like, when your kids are babies, you think, gosh, life is always going to be like this. Like, I'm always going
Yeah.
to be this tired. Life is always going to be this busy and hard. And then you get into a new phase and things get like incrementally better. Um, so that's my advice for dinner.
Yeah, I we are definitely the breakfast for dinner because like on the weekends usually the kids ask for pancakes, and so instead of making what the package suggests for like one sitting, I'll go ahead and make several batches since I'm already cooking the pancakes, and then I'll freeze the rest of them. So
Yeah.
then either it's a quick breakfast during the week, or it's for one of those nights when I'm like, I don't feel like cooking, or we did something really late and I need something really fast, and we don't want to eat out. That I just
Yeah.
take the pancakes out of the freezer and then throw them in, and heat them up, and we have breakfast for dinner.
Yeah, and honestly, like a breakfast for dinner or sandwiches or something, I mean that's fast, that's inexpensive, and that's actually, it's a lot healthier than going through the drive-through or, a lot of restaurant meals would be for takeout. So, yeah, no, it doesn't have to be this like fancy three course, from scratch meal to be a good dinner.
So I know you mentioned picky eaters was like your number one mentioned like topic or issue for moms. How like do you have tips for moms with picky eaters?
Oh yeah, I mean lots of them, but there are many different strategies that you can try, but and some of them may work for you and some of them may not. I have a lot of information on my blog, and I actually do have a free e-course that you get. It's 6 weeks, and each week you get a new strategy to try,
Mm.
and that's totally free. I can give you the link to that as well, and that's sort of a distillation of like my sort of 6 best tips about picky eating. But I think the first order of business is to never call your child a picky eater.
Mm.
You never want to label your child. You never want to say, "Oh, you're so picky, you won't eat anything." I think, picky eating is a very natural part of development that occurs when babies become toddlers,
Yeah.
toddlers into preschoolers, very natural stage of development so that's good to know that it's a natural stage of
Yeah.
development. It's nothing that you did wrong. But then there are things that you can do that will either sort of um, prolong that picky eating or maybe help your child come out of it. And I really, I think being relaxed about it is very important too. That kind of goes along with, not labeling your child or not getting mad at your child for those things. I know that's easier said than done after you've cooked a meal, spent all this time, and they won't touch it. But really, just being relaxed about it. And Ellen Satter, she's a dietitian as well. She's kind of a pioneer in this field. She has a lot of really helpful books on this topic, and she has a whole theory called the division of responsibility with feeding kids. And how this goes is that as a parent, you are in charge of what you feed your child and when you feed your child. And your child is responsible for whether they eat it and how much they eat.
Mm.
So if you follow that, it's very liberating because your job is just to cook the meal or prepare the snack
Yeah.
and set it on the table. And then your job is done. And then you can sit back and enjoy the meal or the snack, and your child's responsible for everything else. And so the problem we get is when we start saying, come on, just a couple more bites, 2 more bites of chicken, and then you can have dessert. Or if you don't finish that, you can't have dessert, or clean your plate, or all the different things that we do to interfere with how much and whether our kids eat. And that can do a lot of harm. First of all, kids can get the idea that they have to eat everything on their plate to be good, to be a good eater. And of course, that doesn't serve them well as they get older.
Yeah.
It can give them the idea that, oh, vegetables are so gross, I just have to choke them down and then I get the good stuff, then I get the dessert. And you don't want your child growing up thinking that either. It's like
Yeah.
you almost sort of have to think. I think about my kids as college students or as adults and think, how do I want them feeling about this food when I'm not there anymore.
Mm.
Like if you're always pressuring your kids to eat certain things and eat certain amounts, how are they going to be a good, not a good eater, I don't like that term, a competent eater, a healthy eater when they're out on their own and nobody's there to tell them how many bites of chicken they
Yeah.
should eat? So, I talk a lot about those kinds of strategies on my blog, and it's nice when parents finally kind of get rid of the nagging and the negotiating. It's so liberating, and it's like, wow, this is easy. All I have to do is make the meal, and then I'm done. Because it's the sitting down and negotiating and bribing and nagging that's the really unpleasant part of the meal. So, yeah, definitely recommend that, Ellen Satter's approach with that.
Yeah, because I feel like more so like when our parents were raising us, that it was always that you have to eat it all, or like,
Yeah.
that's how they were raised, is you don't waste food, you eat everything that's on your plate and all this. And so when now that I'm a mom myself and then I'm in those shoes, I'm like, well, wait, like maybe they're really full, like maybe like.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so it's hard because after you've been brought up a certain way, then it's hard to be like, well, wait a minute, maybe that isn't exactly right for me or for our situation or for this circumstance or whatever. Because yeah, I definitely want them to be able to make their own healthy choices, and also like not grow up second guessing whether they're full or not, because I was always saying like, no, eat two more bites, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
um but I also think that is a really good idea to try different approaches for picky eaters, because there's so much out there. There's so many ways. It's like, well, constantly tell your kids to try it, or like constantly put it on their plate or whatever. But some kids, like, everybody is different, so they're going to respond to one approach much better than they would to like another one if you did it that way, and they might never eat it if you continue doing it that way.
Yeah, you really have to keep in mind, that's a good point. You do have to keep in mind the temperament of your child. And like one example that I talk about on my blog is the one bite approach. So some parents very successfully have you have to take one bite sort of policy at mealtime. And for those parents that they say it works really great, my child tries new foods and has discovered new favorites. And then other parents say, when I do that, it turns into a fight at the table. We ends up in tears. It's awful. Some kids just don't respond to that. I have one of each. So my older son, we did the one bite approach, and he
Yeah.
would sometimes even take 2 and 3 bites to figure out if he liked something. Along came child number 2, who reacted totally differently to that request at the dinner table, and it was such a negative response that I just stopped it entirely, because I said, this isn't worth it. It's not worth every dinner time to become a fight.
Yeah.
I don't want my kids thinking, okay, it's dinner time, I'm going to come to the table and we're going to get into a fight, or mom and dad are going to yell at me, or that's awful. You don't want your kid not wanting to come to the dinner table or dreading mealtime. So that's definitely one time where you have to take into account the temperaments of your child. And I think those of us who have more than one child have seen this in many different ways, that kids can be totally different, raised in the same house by the same parents
Yeah.
with the same rules, but totally different. And I think the same is true with food. I've got one kid who will eat his vegetables first, and I've got one kid who would probably be okay not eating vegetables, at all. And again, raised in the same house with me, same dinners every night. And so, again, cut yourself some slack if you see your best friend, having great success with XYZ strategy or food, and it's not working for you. That's okay. It just means your kids are different, your family's different. Try something else, try it again in a year, whatever it is. Um, just every kid's different.
Yeah. What do you think about parents who, they make a meal for basically themselves, and then their kids, they make a separate meal because they know that their children won't eat the dinner that they made for the adults? Is
Right. So yeah, that is my number one tip, is to not be a short order cook. So if you have already started down that path, it is not too late. But if you have really young kids, just don't start. So I was actually an extremely picky eater as a child, and my mom made me a separate meal many nights of the week because I just was so picky. I was actually looking back on it, I was definitely what they now call an extreme picky eater. So I ate very few foods. And what that sort of taught me was, it's really hard to be a picky eater, and it's hard to go into social situations and not want to eat any of the food, not feel comfortable with the food, be, even frightened by a food that's set in front of you. So I think it's important that, I really wanted to avoid that if possible with my kids. And one of the ways I did that was to not make them separate meals. Just everybody gets the same thing at dinner, and you can either eat it or not. A couple of the caveats I have, though, is one is make sure there's something there that your kid likes, even if it's just the rice or the fruit or the bread or whatever. Make sure there's something on the table. It's really not fair to make a dish your kid hates. In my opinion, it's not fair. And then be like, okay, that's it. Either eat it or go to bed hungry. I I feel like that's not very compassionate to your kids. I can see having the dish your kids eat or hate, excuse me, served with, say, rice or something. So
Yeah.
if they want to just eat the rice, that's okay. If they want to try the rice and a little bite of the dish, they hate, that's okay. Um, and parents will say, but my kid would only eat the rice. And well, that's okay. Make sure you're rotating in your kids' favorites too, but everyone eats those favorites. So even one week we had favorites night where each night I made somebody's favorite. And the idea was that I think it's important for kids to know that every night can't be their favorite,
Yeah.
and everyone has different favorites. Like, gosh, mom really likes enchiladas. I really like spaghetti. Dad really likes soup, whatever it is. But we all share the meal together, no matter what it is. And the other caveat, besides having something on the table that your kids like, is it's okay to deconstruct meals. So if you're having tacos, for instance, or something like that, it's okay for everybody to kind of build their own and let your child decide what they want in theirs. Or you can even do this with pasta, serve the sauce on the side or whatever, veggies, whatever you're having, and let everybody put their own together. You
Yeah.
may need to help toddlers and preschoolers, and maybe they can point to what they want. And if the dish is hot or something, or you don't want them handling the hot utensils, whatever it is. But the idea is that we all eat the same thing, and mom does not jump up and make me peanut butter jelly sandwich or a hot dog or something if I don't like what is being served. Kids will never be encouraged to try new foods if they're always given a peanut butter jelly, if they don't like the main course. And I think too, as parents, we don't have time to make extra meals.
Yeah.
I know I barely have time some nights to make the meal.
Right.
And I think kids should grow up knowing that too, that, mom's time is valuable or dad's time is valuable. And this is our family meal that we share together. And, they can be respectful and say, no, thank you to certain things. That's okay. But, it's the meal we share together.
Yeah, and that's exhausting for moms. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and then especially if you want to sit down, but you can't sit down with your family because you are now making a different, separate meal.
Yep.
Just stressful on everybody. And I do want to say that I recently found that whole, deconstructive meal thing, and that has been granted, like, our kids eat pretty healthy and they're open, both of them, to at least taking one bite and trying it. And but I found that when I've made, tacos, and I just give them the shells and I put everything on the table, and some of it is random and some of it is like your typical taco stuff, but sometimes I, put broccoli or Brussels sprouts or cabbage or mango or whatever, like, on the table in bowls. And then we do the same with pizza. And then I've done just like make your own bowl things where basically I've pulled out, like, that's almost our leftover night, and you can just, put everything in a bowl and mix it up, like, whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it has surprised me how much, like, the things that they will pick that I wouldn't have put together for them. and just,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, just there's something about letting them do it, I guess, that just encourages them or empowers them to try new
Hmm.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I totally agree. And bowls are a great way to do that. And there's so many good recipes online now too for bowls, different sauces and things
Hmm.
that you can do. And we do like a tofu Buddha bowl pretty regularly. And we all have slightly different things in our bowls.
Yeah.
And like one of my kids doesn't like the sauce, the other one absolutely loves it. One will eat tofu, the other one won't. It's like together they probably have a complete bowl, but separately they don't. And that's okay, but it's interesting, like you say, to see what they put together. And when you serve something over and over and over again, a lot of times kids will come around. And I
Hmm.
do have, like, I use guacamole as a great example. Like, I made guacamole for, gosh, probably a year or two before my kids would even try it, because it was green and mushy and they didn't, even though they ate avocado as babies,
Yeah.
I did not do a good enough job of continuing that food. And then all of a sudden they were kind of like fearful of avocados, or just
Hmm.
decided they didn't like them. And so I make guacamole like once a week because I love it. And they wouldn't eat it. And then now here we have, my younger son loves to make it with me and he loves it. And so it just, and there's so many other examples of that in our house where my kids didn't like something and I just kept putting it on the table week after week after week. And then eventually someone works up the nerve to try it and is like, "Oh, I really like this."
Yeah.
Or maybe they try it and they say, "You know what? I don't like this." But they tried it, and at least they keep seeing it and they have the opportunity to try it. And that's super, super important, is just to give your child that exposure to that food and the opportunities to try, and then trust them. It's important for kids to know mom and dad trust me and they're not going to stand over me and tell me what to eat and how much. Because I mean, personally, I would hate it if somebody stood over me and told me how much to eat. And I have nights when I'm not very hungry. Like you were saying,
Yeah.
how, what if my kids are full, and I'm making them eat 5 more bites of chicken? You know what it's like to be full and to have somebody say, no, you
Yeah.
need to eat 5 more bites. That would be awful. So,
Yeah.
that's important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, definitely. And I really liked one of your recent blog posts, and I'm pretty sure it was a blog post, but it was about like boring lunches, and
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of that. Like I call it lunch shaming. Like
Yep.
we shame ourselves into and I know that I was doing it recently. I wanted my kids' lunch to have like all this healthy stuff and whatever. And my kids, every day before they walk out the door, it's like, "Mom, did I get a sandwich?" And like they're legit excited about getting a sandwich. Like these are my kids just like love sandwiches, and so I'm like, "Oh well,
Hmm.
not this time." And they're like, "Oh man," like and I'm like, there's some kids that get the sandwich every day, and they're like, "Man, bologna and cheese again." But my kids are like pumped to get a sandwich in their lunchbox. And so, but I guess I don't know why I just didn't do it as often. And I thought it was like, no, like if I pack my kids a sandwich, like that's awful or something. I don't know. I just like mom shame myself into it.
Hmm.
And so I really love that you talked about, that. And so I was curious to see what your thoughts were on like why we put so much pressure on what our kids' lunches look like, and like what are some what are your thoughts on that whole sandwich deal?
Well, I wrote that post because I have a post called "100 things to pack in a lunch," and I had shared it, and a mom chimed in and said, "Oh, this is great. I really need to stop packing a sandwich and a piece of fruit because that's so boring." And I replied and said, "There is no shame in a sandwich and a piece of fruit."
Yeah.
And it got me thinking that, and of course, I'm part of this too, of posting all these different lunchbox ideas and posting pictures of these, beautifully packed lunches and all colors represented and all food
Yeah.
groups. Um, and there are people out there thinking, feeling badly about their turkey sandwich and piece of fruit. And I thought, and I need to say something about this, so that moms aren't feeling like they can't pack a sandwich. And I'd also read a post that I referenced in that blog post, written by a feeding therapist. or feeding expert, excuse me, and she talked about how if your child's a very picky eater, how really safe, familiar foods are the best things to pack in a lunchbox because, cafeteria is so overwhelming for a lot of kids, especially if they're new to school, new kindergartners or whatever. And opening the lunchbox and having like an old familiar is a really nice way to be sure that your child eats at lunch. You don't want your child to open the lunchbox and be like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start with this, or I've got this soup and I don't have time. I can't even open the container, whatever it is. So I also wanted to drive that point home, and that for some kids, that sandwich might mean that they actually eat their lunch. And a sandwich and a piece of fruit is very healthy. It's not like it's an unhealthy lunch just because it's not, sushi with, all these fancy things in a lunchbox. So, I think whatever, everybody knows their kids, and if your kids like to open their lunchbox and see all kinds of new things every day, or if they would just rather have that sandwich every day. And then maybe they come home and their after school snack is kind of those more interesting exotic foods, or maybe you save those for dinner or breakfast or whatever it is. You kind of know your kid best, or maybe you do sort of a mix of all of those, but there's nothing wrong with a sandwich and a piece of fruit.
Yeah. That's what we've done. 'Cause usually, at my kids' school, they're at a smaller school, so they get to, when they sit down, all the kids sit at tables and they have real plates, and they take their food out and put it on like plates and stuff. And so,
oh, that's nice.
And so, I think it's really interesting how they also see other friends eating certain things, and then they want to try it, and or they're curious, or their friends are curious about their food, and so it's been really interesting. But yeah, we made a deal of like, okay, because usually I put their leftovers, like dinner leftovers if we have some or whatever, in their lunches, because sometimes they can heat up their lunches. And so
nice.
So sometimes, it's leftovers, and then I'm like, okay, well, maybe like 2 times a week I'll throw in a sandwich or whatever. But, so they're like excited about sandwich day, but then, even after the leftovers, I'm like, did you like your lunch? And they're like, yeah. So, but,
Good.
yeah. Also, I wanted to talk to you about, now that you had mentioned, your kids are older, and, like, we have sort of, our daughter, playing soccer and stuff like that, we have sort of already experienced the whole, like, snack thing, not only yeah, not only after school, but like during the games, because they always, for us it was, they alternated snacks, so like one parent would bring snacks to the game one week, and then how do you so like, what are your thoughts on managing snacks when your kids have activities, or when they have snacks during the activities?
So I have a lot of resources on my blog for about around team snacks, and I don't know if that's what you mean by snacks during the game, but when parents are in charge of providing snacks, team snacks, and because when my kids started organized sports, I realized that this was a whole thing of people bringing, donuts and chips and cookies and punch and all that after the games. And I am definitely not the fun police. Anyone who, reads my blog knows that I like sweets and treats, and I am all for, my kids definitely, get plenty of sweets and treats. I love to bake. I am not like withholding sugar from my kids or, anything like that. But it just, in my experience, it was just an excess of kind of junk food every week, and just seemed ridiculous that we were treating every game like a party.
Yeah.
And I'm cool with an end of the season party with cupcakes and whatever else. That's fine. But just felt like it was crazy that we were giving our kids all this stuff after, a 30 or 45-minute peewee soccer game. And the more I talked to other parents, it was like this was happening everywhere. And I just started to write about it a lot, and then create free resources for parents, like templates, email templates they could send to the coach, or snack sign up templates that they could, use for their own teams, and snack lists and ideas of how you can give fruits and even vegetables at team snacks that kids will still enjoy and that'll be fun. And they can still share a snack together, but it's not going to be donuts and a Gatorade,
Yeah.
when they're like 6 years old
Right.
and didn't even really sweat during the game. So that's definitely one of my passion projects. I did write an ebook that I have on my available on my blog as well, that not only covers the snacks in sports, but also, if your teacher's giving candy rewards in the classroom, if your kids is getting a lot of junk at camp, all the different places that kids can get these snacks provided by either other parents or the school or the camp or whatever. I just feel like we're doing our kids a disservice when those snacks are always junk food,
Yeah.
like it just isn't teaching them good habits. I think it's not necessary. I think a lot of this comes from the parents, not from the kids. In my experience, the kids just kind of roll with whatever they're given. And it's the parents who get upset that they're, if you say, let's bring apples instead of donuts or whatever it is,
Yeah.
it's the parents who get mad. And the parents hang on to those traditions and say, that's the fun part of sports. And it's like, that should not be the fun part of sports.
Yeah.
Fun part of sports should be playing the sport.
Yeah.
It should not be getting a donut. And again, you have to think about that habit. Like, are we teaching our kids that no matter what they do, they gather in a group for a club, for a preschool, for a sport, that they get a donut at the end? It's just a bad, a bad habit, I think. So that is one of my pet projects. And I do think that, you know, a lot of times these games are played around mealtime too. Like
Hmm.
maybe your soccer game's just before lunch, or maybe your baseball game's just before dinner. And so, we're spoiling dinner or lunch for a lot of these kids when we're handing them a cupcake and a Gatorade. So I think in some cases it's just easier to let everybody decide what their snack's going to be. So if you can't agree on your team about the snack, then don't have a team snack and just let everybody go home and have lunch or have their own snack or whatever. If people really can't agree. But if you're fueling your kid, if you've got a kid in sports, you need to fuel them in a healthy way and make sure they have a healthy snack before they go to the game, and after the game make sure they have a healthy snack or a healthy meal afterwards. You can replace electrolytes through food. A lot of people don't know that and think that you have to have a Gatorade to replace, sodium or potassium that's lost through sweat.
Hmm.
But food does that too. So food has sodium and potassium too, and it's just a much more wholesome way to replace electrolytes is just to eat a healthy snack or a healthy meal, afterwards.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because a lot of game times are near like lunchtime or meal times, and so then when you have like, a full bottle of Gatorade plus chips, then you're probably going to, like, if you're a busy mom and the game is late and you just need to get the kids home and in
Mm-hmm.
bed or whatever, you're probably going to stop by a fast food place. So on top of the junk that they just had for like snack or after game whatever, then like
Yeah.
now you're going through the drive through and now they're eating like a burger and fries with a Coke, or like, and so that's like a lot of sugar.
It
That's,
is, and and when you look at the amount of sugar in the typical sports snack, it is a lot.
yeah.
When you're looking at the donuts and the cookies and the sweet drinks, I mean, it's so much sugar, and we just really kids really don't need that. I am not, again, I'm not the sugar police, and my kids do eat sugar, but we have to be reasonable, and let's not kid ourselves that like Pee-wee sports are, it's not a reason for, in most cases it's not a reason for Gatorade.
Right.
Gatorade is
Yeah.
it's designed for endurance athletes. And yeah, if your kid's in a soccer tournament all day, it's in the heat, get, sports drink, either homemade or store-bought, can play a role, and some kids need that replenishment. But like the American Academy of Pediatrics says, for most kids, water before, during, and after is just fine enough.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they're not burning as much calories as an NFL player who's drinking
Right.
Gatorade. Like they're not.
Right. And they're not losing a lot. Most of them are not sweating very much.
Yeah.
Let's get real. Like if they're playing like t-ball or something, or even soccer, just kind of trotting around on the field. And even if they are sweating, they're probably not sweating enough to lose all those electrolytes.
Yeah.
For most kids in recreation sports, as kids get older and they are in heavier competitions or all day things, or that's different. But I'm talking about like your Pee Wee soccer game
Right.
on a Saturday morning.
Yeah, but that's true because I used to my daughter, she can't have, for a while she couldn't have eggs or gluten, but now she just can't have gluten, and so and then I have an autoimmune disease, so I can't have a lot of foods either. And so when her soccer games would be around lunchtime, I would just bring her lunch, and then I would bring like a bag, especially when it was like hot, like a bag full of just sliced watermelon. And I found that,
Hmm.
and then I found that when I would sit down, on a blanket and give some to our toddler or whatever, as soon as I pulled out the watermelon, like the kids just like flocked to the blanket, and it was like, hey, these or like
Hmm.
sliced oranges or whatever. And so then
Yep.
I started bringing these other, like then I would intentionally pack more because I knew that once I brought it out for us, they would want some too. And so it's amazing to see that, like, sometimes it is more us of thinking, wow, like the kids would really like this, but also like you'd be surprised that kids really love fruit and
Yeah.
other stuff like that, and they'd be happy to eat. I mean, because they ate me like clean out a watermelon for the whole entire summer. Um, but yeah, that's really interesting, and I will be excited to see how your tips kind of like change as your boys get older and stuff, because already like I watch my kids eat right now and they just eat so much and I'm like
Hmm.
and like and in a good way, but then I have a son too, and so I'm like, man, like I just look at him being like, I'm gonna have to figure out how to like financially feed you.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
how do I survive teenager feedings, because I don't know.
Yeah, and I have a 13-year-old, but he hasn't hit a growth spurt yet, and so he isn't in that like crazy, insane eating
Yeah.
pattern that some of my friends' kids are in. I see little glimpses of it sometimes where he'll eat dinner and then come back and basically eat a really big nourishing snack. He's eaten his dinner, but then he's like, okay, I want a piece of peanut butter toast now, and I want, yogurt. And I think, oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
can't imagine eating a yogurt right now. Like I'm so full from dinner.
I know. Yeah, my husband, he used to play football in high school, and so he's like, "Yeah, for like a snack, I'd eat like a medium pizza." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "What are you talking about? Like that is a meal. Like that should be split between like the three of or whatever." And I'm just like,
Yeah.
we can't like I'm like, "You're going to have to get a raise, because if our son eats like that, then I don't know what to tell you."
Yeah, totally.
Well, thank you so much for being on and sharing that information with us. That was super helpful, and I will definitely share all those links to your website and your course, and also the lean green bean for her advice. I think that was really helpful as well.
Sure.
But yeah, thank you so much. And I do want to ask you three last questions, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And that is, if you could choose like one most influential book that you've read, what would it be?
Well, I do not read like self-help type books, so I
Yeah.
don't have a great suggestion for that. But and I know this isn't really on topic, but I would definitely say like some of the books I read in middle school, like Ray Bradbury, Fahrenheit 451, it was so influential to me because that actually is what showed me what good writing was, and
Mm-hmm.
that there was a difference between in writing styles, and it made me want to be a writer.
Yeah.
So that's probably those early books I read in middle school, are probably the most influential.
Yeah. Is there a book that just like really inspired you into writing, or once you became a writer that you just like read over and over again?
Not really. I mean, I'm a pretty voracious reader and I belong to a book group. And so I read a lot, but I can't say that there are books that I've read over and over.
Yeah.
I'm just always reading something new.
Yeah. Yeah, I've the self-help books I've found for me, I can listen to them better than I can read them,
Mm,
but like
hmm.
I really like a good just story, and sometimes it's the
Yeah.
cheesy ones, and um yeah, and I could read those like all day.
Yeah.
but if it's teaching me something, I probably need to be listening to it like in an audiobook form. For
Yeah, that's a good idea.
yeah, for whatever reason, it's just easier for me to digest that
Hmm.
way. But and then if you could empower women in one way, what would it be?
I think it's what I try to do is empowering women to be confident that they are good moms and that they are doing their best, and to not constantly compare yourself. And I need to take that advice too, but not to constantly be comparing
Hmm.
yourself to other moms, and feeling somehow less because of XYZ, whatever it is, different for all of us. But just you don't want to spend too much time as a mom feeling like you're not enough,
Yeah.
because then that takes away from your ability to connect with your kids if you're always sort of down on yourself.
Hmm.
So just feeling confident that you got this, you're a good mom, and maybe your life doesn't look like somebody else's, but that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Um, and then if you could tell your younger self one thing, assuming that she would listen, what would it be?
Wear sunscreen. Not just because as now I'm in my 40s and I'm definitely seeing the results of not wearing sunscreen, but also I had skin cancer several years ago. I had stage 1 melanoma, and I did not wear sunscreen as, when I was young, and I got a lot of bad burns. And so that's a definite wake up call. Skin cancer. So everybody, I would tell my younger self to wear sunscreen. I tell all the listeners, please wear sunscreen, and please, go to a dermatologist and get regular checks, because that's, I think that with, tanning is so in, and that tan look is so in, but there is a consequence to that. So not to end on a bad note,
No,
but that's
yeah.
always my advice.
Yeah, no, and that's definitely a scary thing to happen too. Was there anything that kind of was there like any visible things that you were like, huh, this is strange, like I might need to go check this out? Or how did you find that?
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. I actually had a plantar's wart on my foot, and that's what took me to the dermatologist, because it was so bad. It was on my heel,
Oh,
and it got so bad that
yeah.
that it was having trouble walking. And I think if it hadn't been for that plantar's wart, I probably wouldn't have gone into the dermatologist. So it's sort of I thank I'm very thankful for that
Yeah.
plantar's wart. But while I was in there, I said, I have this weird spot on my leg, and it was on my lower leg, which is actually a common place for women to have the skin cancers.
Mm.
So and I was, because I was shaving my legs, I was noticing, oh, that bump looks kind of different. And it had sort of changed shape, and it was almost sort of like a triangular shape, and it was that classic, like one side was dark and one side was light. And the pictures that you see of the warning signs. And
Hmm.
so I went in and had it removed, and then in a couple of days they called and said that it was melanoma, which is a very serious form of skin cancer. And if it spreads, it doesn't have a great survival rate once it spreads. So I was lucky that I had caught it early, and it was stage 1, and it hadn't spread. So I have a
Hmm.
big scar on my lower leg, but it was definitely like, okay, I've got to change my ways. I got to be really careful about this. And now I see a dermatologist every 6 to 12 months, and wear a swim shirt and a big hat, and all of that. So
Yeah. Is there any tips? Now we're getting off subject, and I really want to let you go, but now I'm curious, and I'm curious now because like I think about that too. Like I feel when I was younger, I grew up in California, and I don't remember a day of ever wearing sunscreen. Like it just wasn't a part of our habits as a family, and unless my mom knew, we were going to gather with a group of people and we were going to be at the beach all day. Um, and even then I don't really, because I've always been, a tan child that had tan skin a lot. And so I just didn't burn as easily. So maybe, like it was an out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. So I'm curious how you, like as a family, how you implement like sunscreen, because I try to do that with my kids. But do you like, as a woman, do you put it on every day, like before you do your makeup, or what do you do?
Yeah, my moisturizers all have sunscreen in them, and then if I'm out walking the dog, I usually put a hat on,
Mm.
and I try to wear sunglasses, just because of the skin around my eyes. And in the summer, yeah, my boys know like they wear swim shirts, and not all the boys do. Most of the boys don't wear swim shirts, but it's like, hey, this is the way it goes. Like my husband wears a swim shirt, we wear sunscreen. I try to get a kind that's easy to put on. We do use the sprays,
Yeah.
just because that is what is easy to put on and get on, and a stick for the face, and yeah, I mean, try to wear hats. All of those things. I've got one child who has red hair, and so he burns easily. So we really have to be extra careful with him. And then I have one kid who has, skin that tans. So and they both have lots of freckles like me. So we just, I'm not crazy about it. I'm not like making them be under the umbrella all day
Yeah.
at the beach, but
Yeah.
we definitely try to take steps, and I let them know, look, this is important in our family. This is very important. And, they know that I had skin cancer. They know it's important. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, we try to make it part of the summer routine.
Well, that's really good. Well, I'm glad that it didn't spread, and I'm glad that you're healthy and doing well, and hopefully, I
Me
guess,
too.
can it ever come back, or
Yep. Yeah,
okay.
I have a higher rate of recurrence. And my kids, are at higher risk too. So
Mm,
that's important, as well. So yeah.
definitely. So the sun is not worth the initial look of
Right. Get
glow.
yourself a good self tanner, get some bronzer, just fake it.
Yeah,
Yep.
because it's not worth it in the end,
It
honestly.
is not. And you don't want those wrinkles either.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, it's like the new alternative to Botox. So you just don't
That's
sunburn your
right.
face.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for being on. I truly appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. I'm super glad that you're healthy and you're doing well. And yeah, just thanks for sharing your knowledge with us.
Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to that podcast episode. I hope you really enjoyed it. And you have to go check out Sally's website at realmomnutrition.com. She has some really good lunch ideas, some just really good tips, and a lot of tools that she gives away for free to help make meal planning and mealtime super easy and low maintenance. And I think that's my favorite thing about it is that it's super low maintenance and it's easy. It's realistic for me. It's not, cooking duck on a Wednesday night. It's like legit easy meals that I can see myself making, which is super helpful. You can find the links to her show notes page at today'seden.com and click on the podcast tab. And there I will also share the links to all the resources that she shared during this episode, and also the link to her site. So you can go there, your one-stop shop, find everything you need. And the quote I want to leave with you today is, I hate when I'm waiting for mom to cook dinner. Then I remember that I'm the mom and I have to cook dinner. The struggle is real, you guys, so keep on keeping on.